So what's going on guys, Kids here and welcome back to a brand new video. For today I will show you the new updated and insane Valby build that can solo bosses and farm AoV mobs by just one-shotting everyone, which we can do by using our skills and a specific high damage setup. So in this guide I will show you what weapons and modules you want to get. Then I will explain every single skill and show you the best reactors and external components. And then lastly we will take a closer look at the gameplay and weapon mods, so you would know the reason behind every single build choice and what exactly will give us this insane AoV damage. If this sounds interesting to you, then let's get right into it. So our new Valby build is insanely powerful because we will use a specific setup in combination with just one skill and a weapon. This is right now the ultimate way to get millions of XP and items. So I recommend for every player to level your Valby to level 40 and use this build to farm every single thing that you need for your other characters. So then with that said, now let's take a look at our modules. For the first one we have the Supply Moisture, which while on water increases the skill critical hit rate and our weapon attribute trigger rate, and on top of that your mana doesn't get reduced. Then the Long Distance Maneuvering, that modifies our grappling hook range to 25 meters. But the base charge time changes to 6 seconds, and the charge time increases by 20%. This will also increase our max module capacity, which is the main reason why we use this one. Then Dimension Specialist, that increases Dimension Skill Power modifier by 19%. Then Skill Concentration, that increases the skill critical hit damage by 14%. Then Nimble Fingers, that reduces the skill cooldown by -6%. Then MP Collector, which when defeating an enemy, instantly recovers 12% of max HP at a 4% chance. Then Focus on Non-Attribute, that increases our non-attribute skill power by 19% and reduces skill cooldowns by 6%. Then Skill Extension, that increases the skill duration by 9%. Then Time Distribution, that decreases skill cooldowns by -4% and increases max HP by 13%. Then Skill Expansion, that increases the skill effect range by 12. Then Increased HP, that increases the max HP by 22%. And finally the Emergency Measures, that increases the skill critical hit rate by 16% and skill critical hit damage by 7%. So our overall main goal with this setup is to make our abilities as powerful as possible while reducing their cooldowns, so we could basically spam them 24/7. Then next up, let's take a look at the best weapons and mods that we should use. And as our build primarily focuses on skills, so I recommend to only use the first weapon, and then the other two are your personal preference. So for our one and only weapon, we want to use the Ancestor's Devotion, which when you hit an enemy's weak point, it will apply a unique ability called the Devotion Mark, that reduces the enemy's defenses by 30% for 3 seconds. This weapon is very OP just to use on boss weak spots. For you to get this weapon, it will require for you to reach Mastery Rank 1 before you can craft it with Magister in Albion. To craft the ultimate weapon, you will need an Ancestor's Devotion Polymer Synxium, Synthetic Fiber, Nano and Blueprint, which all of them you can farm in Vespers, Timberfall and in the Ancient Tree mission. And then when you get the weapon, we wanna use mods like the Weak Point Sight, that increases our weak point damage by 10%, but reduces accuracy by -5%. Then Action and Reaction, that increases ADK by 15% but reduces recoil by 5%. Then Rifling Reinforcement, that increases ADK by 12%. Then Weak Point Expansion, which on weak point hit increases weak point damage by 35%, but it has a 20-second cooldown. Then next up you have Aiming, that increases weak point damage by 10% but reduces accuracy by -5%. Then Inside Focus, that increases critical hit rate by 5% and critical hit damage by 3%. Then Better Concentration, which increases critical hit damage by 9%. Then Commando Marksmanship, that increases critical hit rate by 5% and ADK by just 1%. Then Electric Enhancement, that adds electric ADK equal to 8% of your weapon's ADK. And finally the Electric Gun Barrel, that increases electric ADK by 23% but reduces fire rate by 6%. As for most weapons, we use the mods to increase our weapon's damage, and because of our unique ability that gives us better weak point damage, so we try to focus with our mods to increase its damage even more for that one-shot capability. Then next up, let's go over to the base reactor and external components. So your reactor is very important item that determines your skill damage and can also include action modifiers that buff certain aspects of your build. I recommend prioritizing using a reactor with the highest skill power and a sub-attack power. Specifically, my best job that I got is this materialized phase reactor with the Disaster's Devotion condition, which makes us do even more DPS. And then as for your external components, they're even more of an RNG, at least until you've played the game for long enough to find basically every possible combination with a good stat roll. For our build specifically, I recommend to get the HP Support Auxiliary Power, that increases our HP, then HP Support Sensor, that increases our max HP even more, then Decimator Memory, that increases our max shields, and because we have 2 set piece, so we get plus 5% increase to our critical hit rate, and lastly we have the Polar Knight Processor, which increases both our max HP and the shields. And finally, let's take a quick look at our skills and when we should use them. The first passive skill is called the Water Intake, which when using skills while standing on the water will consume less mana. Then our first active skill is the Bubble Bullet, that bounces a bubble bullet forward to create a small puddle. Enemies in that small puddle will take continuous damage and are inflicted with the Laundry. Primarily, we rely on this skill for damage and status effects. Moreover, it makes enemies vulnerable to the electricity and chill, and it is useful for playing with a bunny build or others who are buffed by those elements. Then the second one is Plop Plop, which creates a large puddle where she is standing. Then Valby pops out, and enemies in that range take continuous damage and are inflicted with the Laundry. This skill can be used as an escape mechanism, debuff and a charging gap closer. What makes the Plop Plop is the power of the water that's left behind as you activate the skill and continue to do damage over time. Moreover, this also triggers the electrical and chill resistance decreases, which is perfect for any party composition with the Bunny and Viessa. Then next up we have the Cleanup, which makes the Valby become liquefied. While she is liquefied, she cannot take her feet off the ground or use skills, but she can move through the enemies and her movement speed and defenses increases. When moving while liquefied, she creates a path of water that deals continuous damage to the enemies and inflicts Laundry. This skill acts as a mobility tool, debuffs and speed boost. You can move through the enemies, which is a big bonus, but you cannot use skills. Therefore, you want to use this to charge in and debuff enemies or to escape a situation where you are taking too much damage. Moreover, you can skate through the enemies to debuff them and then turn around for our last final skill if it's active. And lastly, we have the Laundry Grenade that changes the weapon equipped for the launcher. When the launcher is fired, a grenade is created, pulling in enemies inflicted with the Laundry and dealing continuous damage. The best way to use it is to debuff enemies with the Laundry status effect and then only dropping the grenade. The base damage is weak, but you can ramp it up to 200% and it has a radius of 8 meters. This is your AoV nuke that you want to use in conjunction with others when enemies are debuffed. As you can see from the gameplay, I'm fighting weak enemies, so they die just from one skill and one shot. But if you're fighting stronger enemies like the elites or bosses, then this will become useful. And that's about it. So with that said, I really do appreciate everyone for watching guys and I hope you enjoyed it. If you have any questions or suggestions, then feel free to leave your comments in the comment section down below. And while you're doing that, please click like, subscribe and enable that notification bell, so this way you could support the channel and not miss any more amazing content. With that said, you have an amazing day and I will see you in the next one. So take it easy, peace.